I have Executive Director Douglas Flory of the Laughlin Children's Center. And thank you for being here.
Oh, my pleasure, my pleasure.
And to start off, will you tell us, what is the Laughlin Children's Center?
Well, we are an educational support provider. We've been around since 1956. We're located in Sewickley. Our roots actually stretch back to something called the Sewickley Fresh Air Home that was founded in 1897. It was a place where newborn infants and their mothers could go to escape the pollution of downtown Pittsburgh and recuperate. That center by 1950 had closed, but there was a significant amount of money left in its bank account from Mary and Alexander Laughlin, who founded the home, and that money became the Laughlin Children's Center. So we see kids with a variety of issues. We have a speech department that does screenings and evaluations and then does speech therapy with children, mostly one-on-one. We have a psychology department that does evaluations of children, and they do child and family counseling. We have a big academic department that sees kids from preschool all the way up through high school who have issues related to learning. The academic department and the psychology department actually partner to do psychoeducational evaluations. So if you have a child who's struggling in school and you need to figure out why, Laughlin's a good place to come and have an evaluation. And then we also have a nationally accredited preschool called the Village Preschool at Laughlin.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, a lot
You have
going
a lot
on.
of things going on
We
there.
do. Excuse me.
And could you tell me, take apart each program and tell me a little bit about what's a daily routine or a typical day at one of those programs for a child at Laughlin?
Sure. Well, preschool's probably the easiest. We have a morning class and an afternoon class. We're not a full-day preschool. So your child would come for a morning session or an afternoon session. And unlike a lot of preschools that, for example, if you're 3 years old, the preschool might dictate that you come 2 days a week, and those 2 days are Tuesdays and Thursdays. Our preschool is what is called a mixed age classroom. So 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, and 5-year-olds are in the same preschool class together. And their families are the ones that tell us how often they want their child to come and which days of the week they want the child to come. We call it family-friendly scheduling. We just feel like children have lots of different needs, and just because you're 5 years old, that doesn't mean that 4 days of preschool every week is right for you, or just because you're 3, that only 2 days a week is right for you. So preschool is pretty easy. The other 3 programs are a little bit different because kids don't come to us for their school day. They go to school in a school district or a parochial school or a private school, and they come to us for support services. The speech department tends to see pretty little kids who might not even be in preschool yet. So the speech department is pretty busy all day long. We have clients that start coming in at 9 o'clock, and we might have our last client at 7 o'clock in the evening. Most of our academic clients come after school because they're in school during the day, although we do have some homeschool children who come, and they can come, whenever. And then the psychology department is a little bit of a mix because they do see some younger kids, but the majority of their children and the families come after school as well.
And I'm sure children coming into Laughlin's, they're probably a little nervous and
They are.
excited and have different mixed emotions.
Right.
How do your educators at Laughlin's help comfort the kids?
Yeah, that's a really terrific question.
Yeah.
Because you're right, what we're asking kids to do is come and work on the thing that they probably like least, the things that are giving them trouble, whether that's the R sound or 3rd grade math or dealing with your feelings. So a big part of Laughlin is hooking the child and the family up with one clinician. And when I say clinician, that could be a speech therapist, it could be a certified teacher, it could be a licensed professional counselor, a school psychologist, a clinical psychologist, an Orton Gillingham tutor. Clinician sort of encompasses all of those. But what we try to do is hook the child and the specific clinician up and let them develop a relationship. And we've seen that can really help with the child's self-esteem. It can help them become a real lover of school if they weren't before. Reading, for example, is a big thing. So if you're not a very good reader and your parents tell you, okay, you're going to go to Laughlin for an hour and work on nothing but reading, chances are you're not going to be very happy.
Yeah.
But by finding the right tutor to fit that child's personality and academic needs, we're really successful in getting kids to become engaged and then successful, and because they're successful, really enjoy the thing that they used to hate. So that's exciting to see, when
Yeah.
a child makes that transition.
And it probably makes them very proud of themselves.
Exactly.
Also.
Exactly.
So have that extra confidence.
Yeah. Well, and it makes the clinicians feel good too, frankly. Yeah.
And the children and families that come to Laughlin's and you watch them grow through these programs, what are some of the reactions that you receive from the families?
Well, I think one of the really cool things, because we've been around so long, is that we now have grandparents who maybe watch their grandchildren during the day and bring those grandchildren in for speech services, who tell us, my son or my daughter went here. So, we're servicing multiple generations of the same family, and that makes us feel like, we've really been effective in creating positive change in that family's life. We have an upcoming event that we'll talk about probably in a little bit called Celebrate the Stars in April. And one of the cool things about that is the stars that we're celebrating are some of our client families. So we have 5 different families coming and attending this event, and they'll be talking with attendees of the party about what brought them to Laughlin, what decision-making process they went through to choose us versus somebody else, and then how Laughlin has impacted their child or their family's lives. So it should be a fun evening.
And could you tell me a little bit more about that event and,
Yeah.
and dates and times and what we
sure.
can expect? How can we get involved?
Yeah, it's called Celebrate the Stars. It's sort of a happy hour concept. It's from 5:30 to 7:30 on Friday, April 4th. It's at the center, which is located on Frederick Street in Sewickley. Tickets to attend are really inexpensive. It's $25 a person. There'll be hot hors d'oeuvres, cold hors d'oeuvres, beer, wine, soda, water, as well as desserts. We'll have live entertainment. We'll have a photo booth that everybody can pile in with, crazy costumes on. And folks who attend will be given a map, and on the map are all of the different refreshment stations. If they visit all of those, they can turn their map in at the end of the night and be entered into a drawing to be able to rent the photo booth for their own event. So if somebody has a graduation coming up or a big birthday party, we thought it would be really fun to be able to raffle off this photo booth.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. So at each of those food stations, there'll be clinicians as well as the 5 client families, or stars, that attendees will be able to learn a little bit more about Laughlin's services. So it should be a fun evening.
And is that open to families in all ages, or is it an adult-only event?
It's an adult-only event. It's really a cocktail party.
Okay.
Some of the families, some of our star families, are bringing their children so that the kids can talk about their experiences. But by and large, it's really an adult event. But everybody's welcome. They can go on our website for more information. They can contact the center. If they're not a fan on Facebook, they can become a fan of Laughlin Children's Center on Facebook and learn more about it that way as well.
That sounds like a nice date night for parents.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and it's nice. We wanted it to be a fairly quick, easy sort of an evening. Nothing that you have to get dressed up for and drive in and pay for parking and all of that kind of stuff. We thought 5:30 to 7:30 right after work on a Friday. The other fun thing is, and my nonprofit colleagues in Sewickley would shoot me if I didn't mention this, there are a lot of other things going on in Sewickley that night. Sweetwater Center for the Arts has a big opening of an exhibit called Wild Things that's going to be a lot of fun. And it's also the spring Sewickley Gallery Walk. So there'll be a lot happening.
So they can visit each location.
Exactly.
Nice.
Yeah.
That is nice. It's nice that you planned that. Did you plan that and coordinate with the other nonprofits?
I'd love to say yes, but it just kind of happened that way.
It worked out well?
Right, it did.
That's fantastic. And Laughlin recently received a large grant to establish a dyslexia center. What exactly is dyslexia?
Well, I think people have a notion that it's that problem that some kids have of reversing letters.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be part of it, but that's a tiny part. Really what it is a disorder where people have difficulty processing language.
Mm-hmm.
And language is everything. It's the spoken word, it's the written word, it's reading. So it's a much bigger problem and a bigger issue than most people think when they think of dyslexia.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll have special assessments and evaluations that children can do to find out whether they have dyslexia or not.
Okay.
And then once we know that, there's a special, not treatment, that's not the right word, a special approach
Mm-hmm.
that teachers can take with students with dyslexia. It's called Orton-Gillingham.
Mm-hmm.
It's named after a doctor and a psychologist who was also a reading specialist. And it's a one-on-one approach working with children, and it's a lot of repetition. And really what Orton-Gillingham tries to do is rewire whatever's wrong in the child's brain that is presenting this language processing problem.
Mm-hmm.
I think you'll hear athletes talk about muscle memory. This is sort of muscle memory. It's redoing the sort of language process often enough that the child relearns how to see that word or say that word or comprehend that word.
Mm-hmm.
So we're really excited about the grant from the Pierce Family Foundation. We're really excited about the dyslexia specialist that we've hired. She's not only trained in Orton-Gillingham, this special approach, but she's also a trainer. So we're anxious to get our clinicians certified as Orton-Gillingham teachers and get up and running, and that will happen sometime late spring, early summer.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing how that works and how you're explaining about the Gillingham
Yeah.
process and procedure.
It's really, we're so excited, and the nice thing is it fits in with our mission so well already. We already use some of the Orton-Gillingham approaches, and in fact, since 1956, the quote that's on a lot of our material is, if a child can't learn the way I teach, then I need to teach the way he learns. And that quote is from Anna Gillingham of the Orton-Gillingham method. So we've had this connection for a long time, and the grant's really helping us expand upon our skill set so that we can help children.
Nice. That's a nice,
Yeah.
nice motto.
Yeah.
to keep
Isn't
in
it?
mind. I like it. And what are symptoms or things that parents should be aware of in their children if they think that they may have dyslexia or that they may need to see a clinician or physician?
That's tough. I mean, if there are any sort of language issues, whether it's your child having difficulty speaking or comprehending, so there's expressive speech, which I'm doing right now. There's also receptive language, which is what you're doing. You're listening to my expressive language. So if a child's having problems with either of those processes, either not being able to communicate or not understanding what's being communicated to him or her. And then likewise, there's the written word. So if a child has difficulty writing or really hates to do any sort of written work or any sort of reading, those are some pretty big indicators that there's some sort of language process issue. It may or may not be dyslexia, and that's why parents should really get their child evaluated so that they can make that determination.
And they can be evaluated at Laughlin?
They can.
Correct.
They can. We're lucky and we're somewhat unique in that a lot of times an evaluation is done by one person. It might be a neuropsychologist or it might be a school psychologist. At Laughlin, we break that up into two different people, and we have a school psychologist do one part of it, but then we have trained teachers who do the academic side of it. Our thought is that it gives a richer picture to parents because it has two sets of professionals' eyes looking at their child and looking at the way their child has completed this evaluation. And at the end of it, we think that we can get to issues a little more quickly and deal with them a little more deeply by having two different clinicians involved in the evaluation process. So the child would come, have the evaluation probably over a course of multiple times, because what we don't want is for them to get tired or stressed out, because that would affect the results. At the end of all of that, the clinicians write up a report, and then they meet with the parents to explain what the report is and what the recommendations are.
So parents would start to notice this, or maybe bring their children to Laughlin's at the early development stages, or is there a certain age range that you would suggest for them to?
Well, it's probably going to manifest itself earliest in speech, because certainly we speak and we listen before we read and write. So those 2, 3, that would be about when you would see those problems. Maybe a little bit earlier if it's a really profound problem.
And I'm interested in hearing more about the Dyslexia Center itself and the grant. Would you tell me more about? You received a really nice grant.
Yeah, a $100,000 grant
so
from a local family foundation, the
I think we
Pierce
should
Family
talk about
Foundation.
that.
Joan and Bob Pierce are wonderful supporters of the center. That money will be used not only for the program activities themselves, but to buy materials, to get our teachers trained, all of that sort of thing. What we realized pretty quickly, not a lot of people know about the grant. This is sort of the big announcement. But the families that do know about it, the people that do know about it, we've already started to get calls. So we're pretty certain once all of our teachers are trained in Norton Gillingham and we really start seeing kids, there's going to be a lot of demand. So we're already making plans to expand the center. Folks who've watched this program over the years have heard about Laughlin's renovation. That we finished that in August 2 years ago. And even at the end of that renovation, I think because so many people were interested in what was happening at the center, our numbers started to grow. And they've continued to grow every year. So even without the dyslexia program, we were already running out of space. Once we got this grant from the Pierces, we realized that we were probably sooner rather than later going to need some additional therapy spaces. So we have already started working with the contractor, and we hope that process will move pretty quickly, so that by the time we're up and running, we'll also be in the process of building these new classrooms. So I'm really excited about that.
That is exciting. And will it be located where your current facility is?
It will. The renovation that we did 2 years ago didn't, the footprint of our buildings didn't grow. This time we'll be adding on. So it'll be a new set of things to learn about. I think the academic staff, or the administrative staff and the clinicians and I and the board really learned a lot about architecture when we did the renovation, but it was all in an existing building. So now we're going to have to learn a whole bunch of new vocabulary, because they're going to have to build on, so foundations and footers and all of that kind of stuff.
Oh, it's exciting.
Yeah,
And hopefully that will do well with attracting new families and bringing them in, because people like new things and to
They
check
do.
them out.
That's
So
exactly right. That's
it makes
exactly
it
right.
Continue on.
Yeah.
Great. And also, what would you say, how important it is for parents to stay educated and informed on different of these different development stages of children, and knowing when it's time to get help for them, and knowing that they should, it's okay to take your child, and to have that confidence and saying, it's all right, my child needs this, and it's bettering the child.
It's another really good question. I think the good news is that we're light years ahead of where we used to be when we think about learning difficulties or learning differences. There was a time when special ed was really something that people were embarrassed by, or tried to hide, or didn't want their child to be labeled. And I certainly understand that, and especially the idea of labeling a child with a disability. But I think that we've moved far beyond where that is a source of embarrassment for a family. I think today most folks realize that we're all individuals and we all have a unique learning style. Some of us learn best by reading. Some of us learn best by doing. Some of us can just listen to instructions and be able to do a task. Some of us have to write those instructions down as we're listening. All of those are differences, and to varying degrees, they can have an impact on our education. So there's not really anything that different about these kids who have more difficulty than the rest of us. They have a different way of learning, and our clinician's job is to figure out how to help that child learn best. So I would say that in terms of what parents should look for, I think the number one thing is to trust your instinct as a parent. If you think there's something wrong, there really might be something wrong. And the best time to bring in an expert is today. The one thing that we talk